So just to complete what we're talking about in the previous video, Jerome Bruner says that children need to learn new concepts. And so they use the scaffolding process, which is the support of the adults around them, the parents around them, the peers, whatever the case is, or even the technology around them. They use this and they're quite dependent on the support. But as they become more independent in their thinking and as they acquire new skills or knowledge, then the support can gradually fade and eventually completely dissipate because they are now independent. They're able to then do it for themselves. And like I said earlier, this is very much like the scaffolding on the side of a building. It helps to get you to the next level. And as you are able to finish the building, you can then dismantle the scaffolding. So it's very, very similar to that concept, and it's a good way for us to understand it. So as teachers, it's important for you to provide opportunities for children to learn new things. And even though it might be very difficult, new concepts, you need to be the person that is supportive and able to help them get to that next level. Therefore, you must be very aware of the provide this support and scaffolding as it is appropriate. So from 0 to 1 years really is the first kind of memory. Inactive representation. And this is usually within the first year of life. And so if you think about it, it corresponds with Piaget's sensory motor stage. So thinking is based entirely on physical actions, and infants learn by doing rather by more complex internal representations or things like thinking. It involves encoding physical action-based information and storing it in our memory. This mode later, or this continues later in physical activities such as learning to ride a bike. So it's about muscle memory, remembering how. Many adults can perform a variety of motor tasks like typing, sewing, and so on that they would find difficult to describe in a picture or in a symbolic way. Then the iconic representation or image base is usually from 1 to 6 years, and information is stored as a sensory image and icons. That's how you think about it, usually in a visual manner, like pictures in the mind. So for some, this is conscious. Others say that this may explain why when we are learning a new subject, it's often helpful to have diagrams or illustrations to accompany the verbal information. And thinking is also based on the use of other mental images such as hearing, smell, or touch. So it depends how you learn. Oftentimes people say that if you say the word elephant, they actually think of an elephant. For me, if someone says elephant, I think of the word spelled out, which is why when I read something, I can generally remember it very well. So it depends on how someone is able to acquire and think about the symbolic representation, which is language based, which is from the year 7 onwards. This develops loss. This is where information is stored in the form of a code or a symbol such as language. So language is seen as a code or a symbol. Even though we think of words as that is the word, that is how it is, it's actually a code or a symbol. And this mode is acquired around 6 to 7, which in Piaget's stages is the concrete. In the symbolic stage, knowledge is stored primarily as words, mathematical symbols, or in other symbol systems such as music. Symbols are flexible, either they can be manipulated, ordered, classified. The user isn't constrained by actions or images which have a fixed relation to what they represent. So it doesn't necessarily mean that a symbol will always mean the same thing in every situation. These can change. So you could use one symbol to represent family, and the same symbol could represent danger. It just depends on the context, of course. Okay, so now we will move on to the constructivist perspective, and this is really about the prior knowledge of the learner. Here it's believed that students are not passive in the learning process. They're actively involved in the process of meaning making and knowledge acquisition through experiences, through their previous knowledge. So this is where teachers will ask learners, so we're going to learn about the elephant today. Tell me, what do you know about an elephant? And then they base the information on the prior knowledge. So when you think of an elephant, you think, okay, it's big, it's gray, whatever the case. Whatever the case is, when the teacher puts up a picture and the elephant is white, you look at it and you think, but this isn't how I understand an elephant to look. And then you learn something new. Also in the constructivist perspective, Behavior, skills, attitudes, and beliefs are inherently situated, so within the individual. And problem solving is an important component because you are engaging in behavior and you're engaging in the learning process. You are learning how to do things through doing them. And then the constructive perspective can be considered in three different ways: the social constructivist, the cognitive constructivist, and the radical constructivist or constructivism. So some quick points on the constructivist perspective. Learning is due to experiences, as I alluded to in the previous slide. It is an active process, not an inactive process. It is a long, lifelong process. We discover new knowledge all the time, from the cradle to the grave, as they say. Constructing knowledge is thinking and interpreting. You may interpret the meaning, or you may interpret something to mean different things in different ways, and learning is a social process. Okay, now we move on to the developmental perspective. We're going to be doing a lot of work in this area. This perspective looks at growth and change through the lifespan, and it considers what happens to a person at every stage. What are the milestones? What are the expectations at every stage of a person's life? How does our thinking, feeling, and doing change or evolve over our lifespan? And there's a huge focus on the childhood phase, because the childhood phase will then set the foundation upon which everything else is built later on in life, and various domains are considered. So these domains could be the cognitive, biological, social, moral, as we spoke about earlier. In Educational Psychology 1, there are various domains to consider. Development is active and is best studied over time or over a lifespan. And it helps us, if you understand the developmental phase, it helps you to determine whether development has been typical or not, if there's an issue, if there's a challenge, if a child seems to be delayed. It considers nature versus nurture quite a bit, and each stage builds on the stage before it. So if the stage before it, again, I keep saying this, but it will be the foundation upon which other skills will be acquired. And each new stage comes with new tasks and skills and expectations. So for example, walking and talking will be at one stage of development, and only when you walk can you then run. So it will start from crawling, which will then be built into walking at the next stage, and then running at the next stage thereafter. Okay, so this is a quick snapshot of the perspectives in educational psychology. You're going to be doing some reading from the textbook Educational Psychology in Social Context, which is on EBSCO-host, that you can access through the Moodle platform. You can only download 20 pages at a time, so you will have to take the information in chunks, but I hope that this has provided some kind of a base for you. We're also going to be looking at Erik Erikson within this module, but for now, because we've already touched on Erikson in previous modules, I decided not to put it in this video. Please feel free to check out these resources that I used to compile this video. It's extremely helpful to understand the work in more detail, which you'll have to do on your own by reading these texts or reading from the textbook. So after the task, for the first task, we will be doing some reading, and then you'll be doing your bigger task for this module. I hope that this video provided some kind of a base for you, and that you'll develop your understanding as we progress through these units. Thank you.